Title: The Painting They Threw Away. At my grandson's baby shower, my daughter-in-law smiled at the guests, held up the painting I had spent nearly 4 months creating, and laughed. "Oh, that's sweet," she said, tilting her head toward the phone her best friend was using to record everything. "But we only decorate with original gallery pieces. Homemade art really doesn't fit our style." Then, without another thought, she leaned over and placed my painting beside the trash can with the torn wrapping paper. The room filled with that uncomfortable half-laugh people make when they don't know whether something is funny or cruel. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply walked over, picked up the painting, brushed a piece of ribbon from its frame, thanked everyone for inviting me, and quietly left. That night my phone rang. The voice on the other end belonged to my son. He wasn't crying. He sounded worse than that. "Mom," he whispered. "What was hidden inside the frame?" I slowly sat down at my kitchen table. The painting rested against the chair beside me, exactly where I had left it. My fingers touched the carved wooden frame that my husband had made years earlier. "Why are you asking, Daniel?" Because only a few minutes earlier, my son had discovered that his wife hadn't thrown away an old painting. She had nearly thrown away the last gift his father had spent almost 30 years preparing for the grandchild he would never live to meet. And once the entire family learned the truth, nothing in our family would ever be the same again. Welcome back. If you've ever made something with your own hands only to watch someone treat it like it was worthless, then this story is for you. Stay until the end, because sometimes the cheapest looking gift is the only priceless thing in the room. My name is Eleanor Brooks. I'm 69 years old. For more than 40 years, I owned a small art studio on Maple Avenue where I painted family portraits, restored old canvases, and taught children how to hold a paintbrush before they ever learned algebra. Some people speak through music, some speak through writing. I've always spoken through color. I can tell when a painting was rushed. I can tell when an artist was afraid. And I can always tell when someone poured part of their soul into a canvas. That's something no auction house can ever put a price on. These days, my hands aren't what they used to be. Arthritis arrived little by little. At first, it was just stiffness every morning. Then it became pain every time I wrapped my fingers round a brush. Some mornings, I have to soak my hands in warm water for 15 minutes before I can paint a single straight line. I don't mention that because I want sympathy. I mention it so you'll understand what 4 months of painting really cost me. Every flower, every cloud, every tiny reflection on the water. Every stroke hurt, and I painted anyway. Because this wasn't just another painting. It was the last promise I had made to my husband. People look at women my age and think we're harmless. They think we live quietly, that we're sentimental, old-fashioned, easy to ignore. My daughter-in-law certainly did. When she looked at me, she didn't see an artist. She saw an elderly widow who still believed handmade gifts belonged at family celebrations. She underestimated me. I've learned something over nearly 70 years. Being underestimated is often the greatest advantage you'll ever have, because people only reveal who they truly are when they believe you have nothing to offer. That's exactly what happened that afternoon. But to understand why that painting mattered, you have to understand my husband. His name was Arthur Brooks. Arthur passed away 11 months before the baby shower. 45 years of marriage. Then one ordinary Tuesday morning in a hospital room, and suddenly every room in my house echoed. Arthur wasn't loud. He never needed to be. He drove the same pickup truck for nearly 20 years. He owned 3 watches in his entire life. He repaired things instead of replacing them. If he noticed someone struggling, he helped quietly and never mentioned it again. He believed generosity only counted when nobody applauded it. But there was one thing about Arthur very few people knew. He planned decades ahead. While other men bought expensive toys, Arthur bought time, little by little, year after year. He used to tell me, "Patience earns better interest than money ever will." At the time, I thought he was talking about life. I didn't realize he meant it literally. And I had absolutely no idea that for almost 30 years, he had been quietly preparing a gift for a grandchild who hadn't even been born yet. Arthur talked about becoming a grandfather long before there was any reason to. Sometimes we'd sit on our back porch after dinner, watching the sunset fade behind the oak trees, and he'd smile to himself. "I wonder if they'll have your eyes," he'd say. "Or your stubbornness?" I'd tease. He'd laugh. "I hope not. One stubborn Brooks in the family is enough." He imagined everything: teaching a little boy to fish, helping a little girl build birdhouses, reading bedtime stories with ridiculous voices, sneaking candy before dinner while pretending Grandma wasn't looking. He planned entire summers that would never come. Our only son, Daniel, married later than most of his friends. His wife, Vanessa Carter, focused on her career for years before they finally decided to have children. Arthur never complained. He simply waited, patiently. Hope was something he never seemed to run out of. Unfortunately, time did. When Vanessa finally announced she was pregnant, Arthur had already been fighting heart failure for almost 3 years. The doctor didn't need to tell us what we both already knew. We were running out of tomorrows. 1 week before he died, Arthur asked me to bring down an old cedar box from the top shelf of our bedroom closet. I'd seen that box almost every day of our marriage. I had never opened it. It was one of those mysterious little collections husbands keep. Old receipts, fishing licenses, random screws, things wives learn not to question. I placed it on his lap. His hands trembled as he lifted the lid. Inside, instead of junk, were dozens of carefully organized envelopes, each one labeled by year, each tied with faded blue ribbon. I looked at him. "What is all this?" Arthur smiled. "The future." He handed me the first envelope. Inside were investment certificates, then another, then another. Some dated nearly 30 years earlier. Every birthday bonus, every tax refund, every profitable year at work, every unexpected check. He had quietly invested small amounts, again, and again, and again. Not because we were wealthy, we weren't, but because Arthur believed consistency was stronger than luck. Finally, he handed me one larger envelope. Across the front, written in his unmistakable handwriting, were the words, "For my very first grandchild." Started the year Daniel turned 10. I couldn't speak. My eyes filled before I even opened it. Arthur reached for my hand. I figured someday there'd be one. His breathing was shallow now. I wanted that little one to begin life knowing somebody believed in them long before they existed. I looked through every document. There were investment bonds, certificates, savings accounts, everything carefully organized, everything documented, everything growing quietly for decades. "Arthur, how much?" He smiled. "I checked last month. It's worth a little over $60,000 now." I stared at him. $60,000. hidden in a cedar box, patiently growing while the world rushed past. Then he squeezed my hand. Eleanor, this isn't really about the money. It's about the years. Every certificate represents another birthday, another Christmas, another year I believed our family would keep growing. He looked toward the hospital window. I won't get to meet the baby, but maybe they'll know I was waiting. I nodded through tears. They will. He was quiet for several minutes. Then he said something I'll never forget. Promise me one thing. Anything. Don't hand them an envelope. I frowned. What do you mean? He smiled, that crooked smile I'd fallen in love with decades earlier. If people see money first, they only remember the money. I want them to discover the love before they discover the value. He looked toward the corner of the room where one of my unfinished landscapes leaned against the wall. Paint something. Something beautiful. Hide it inside the frame. Make them really look. He chuckled softly. Art teaches people to slow down. If they don't slow down enough to appreciate the painting, they probably don't deserve what's hidden inside. That became the very last conversation we ever had about the future. Arthur passed away 3 days later. The house became painfully quiet. For weeks, I couldn't even enter my studio. Every brush reminded me of him. Every unfinished canvas felt abandoned. Then one morning, I remembered his words, paint something, so I did. Not because I felt inspired, because I needed somewhere to place my grief. I bought the finest linen canvas I'd ever worked on, nearly 3 feet wide, solid oak frame, museum-quality oils. If this painting was going to carry Arthur's final gift, it deserved to last generations. The subject came to me almost immediately. A lighthouse, standing alone against the sea. Arthur had loved lighthouses. He always saw